Hey guys, it's Selwen here, and today let's talk about this little spec called the Fury Warrior. Oh yes, and I just got to say, coming from the enhancement and elemental, which if you saw my previews I wasn't a big fan of, this just made up for it in spades. So freaking awesome. Now, I wasn't a big fan of Legion's Fury, just thought of it as alright, but the over-reliance on battlecry and cooldowns and the fact that you kinda still needed a trinket from 2 tiers ago to make yourself more relevant and min-max your DPS, and in general how it played, it just didn't really had that thing, you know? But now they nailed what the Fury Warrior is supposed to be, and it's not final yet. There is still some changes to come, primarily on talents, I believe, just some minor things. And of course, tuning and stuff like that to your numbers, but hopefully the core gameplay will stay. So to explain all of that, we need to talk about your abilities. So the big change here that made your Fury Warrior play so much faster is because of your new Enrage. In Legion, it doubled your attack speed and increased your damage based on mastery. That's still here, but instead of increasing attack speed, it gives you 25% haste, essentially a mini bloodlust, plus 10% movement speed. And still procs from your rampages that cost 85 rage or your bloodthirsts at 30% chance and also generating 8 rage, so no longer tied to your crits. Now what it means is that every time you enrage, everything just goes into hyper mode. You attack faster, your global cooldowns get lower, your abilities get their cooldowns reduced, like Bloodthirst, the new Raging Blow, or even Execute, more on that in a minute. And you just go on this maniac spam mode, which just feels awesome. Now adding to this, the Raging Blow is not different. It's on 2 charges and usable whenever, not tied to enrage, has 20% chance to reset the cooldown when you use it, plus again the cooldown on itself is reduced by haste, generating 12 rage up from 5 in Legion. So with every enrage, those Raging Blows just get even more spammy. That simple proc adds that needed unpredictability to the spec as well, but it's not the type of RNG that makes you want to throw your PC out of the window. It's just a perfect amount because if you don't get it, it's still perfectly fine as the cooldown is really short anyway, and again, haste benefits it. And another small thing about Raging Blow is that they kinda change the animations for it. Now it doesn't always play the same animation, there's kinda different ones every once in a while, which kinda adds a new feel to Raging Blow as well, which is really cool. Now, you don't really have a filler. Furious Slash is a talent. Your filler is now Whirlwind, just generating a 3 rage up to 8 per target hit, plus provides the Meat Cleaver buff, which is your main way to cleave or AoE, as it makes your next 2 single target attacks hit 4 targets in front of you, doing 40% of its damage. And yes, all attacks, not just Bloodthirst or Rampage. All of them, so Raging Blows and even Executes as well. And again, due to how fast the spec is and your new cooldown, which I'm gonna talk in a bit, you really don't need a filler anyway, and all of this at low gear. You can generate rage pretty fast for those rampages and then in turn even more enrages, no issue at all. There is some downtimes obviously, but they are really far in between. Now, that Whirlwind change also means that you are a freaking cleaving machine, which just adds to the spec even more so, as now you're not just mercilessly brutalizing mobs, you are massacring most of them in front of you, which just feels great. The fact that it is 2 stacks is even better, but it doesn't stack higher than that, so there is still some management to be done in between your whirlwinds and your other abilities. Not much, but some. So for the most part, still is build rage, dump in rampage, get enrage, and then just spam, spam, and spam, and then rampage again, etc, and etc. But just the fluidity of it, just how fast it plays and feels, makes it really goddamn fun. And again, you still have that Raging Blow proc to keep you more interested and engaged in what you're doing due to that randomness. Then you get your Execute, which like I sort of hinted, is different now. It is now on a cooldown, reduced by haste as well, so it's gonna get pretty short with enrages and gear. Remember, gear is gonna make this even better to some extent. It will get to a point that more haste is just gonna be too much, right? Especially when you mix the bloodlust in here, it's just gonna go through the roof, so haste might get a little bit weird stat-wise for you. But Execute now generates rage, doesn't use it. Your only spender is Rampage, meaning Execute phases, you're gonna get even more rage for more rampages, and in turn more enrages and just more massacring in general. It's usable at 20% HP, the same as in Legion, not 35%, that's a talent that I have on. And yeah, what else you get that is new? Well, you get your new Battle Shout back as your main buff to provide attack power, and of course your cooldown, I almost forgot. It went back to being named Recklessness, thank you for that, and it means now that you go berserk, obviously, increasing all rage generation by 100%, that means from all of your abilities or even passives, and increases your critical strike chance by 20% for 10 seconds on 1.5 minute cooldown. Now, it is on a global cooldown, but is really the only cooldown that you have anyway? You don't have Avatar or Bloodbath or any of that. At least as of yet, they might come in the future with some changes. I mean, who knows? But basically what it means is that you're not super reliant on it like in Legion, but it just makes things flow even better. And now when you pop it, you just can go into rampages much quicker and of course crit more. Once again, it adds to this fast and brutal style of a spec perfectly. And yeah, as for the rest, as stay the same as in Legion. So now let's take a look at your talents, which just makes it even better. So on the first tier, you get choices that's just gonna improve your rage basically. So you get War Machine, auto attacks generate an extra 10% rage, plus killing an enemy gives 10 rage and a 30% movement speed buff. Basically your go-to for dungeons or out about in a world and whatnot. And then you get your Endless Rage. Every time you enrage, you gain 6 rage or 12 if Recklessness is up. Seems like an easy choice for single target or raids, just to get more rage overall. But you do get a choice here between this and the new Fresh Meat, where Bloodthirst gains an extra 15% chance to enrage you and heals you for 20% more. Personally, I felt like Endless Rage works better overall. That said, it can lead to some overcapping of rage, so if you are minimaxing, that's something to take in mind. But Fresh Meat still is an RNG sort of talent, so Endless Rage seems like the easiest choice. Next tier is the same as in Legion, although it's worth noting that we no longer have Shockwave at all, so our only stun now comes from Stormbolt, so it might be something you want to take in M+. Next we get our Inner Rage, which just gonna reduce the cooldown by Raging Blow by 1 second and increase its damage by 15%. Seems like a well-rounded choice for anything, be it dungeons or raids. That said, we also get Sudden Death, where we're gonna get that Execute proc. You probably know all about it, comes from arms and all of that. And Execute now generates rage, and the proc is rather frequent. So both of these actually work great even for AoE or rather cleaving. Both are great for any situation, mainly because you either gonna get more damage on Raging Blow cleaves and slightly more of them, or you're gonna be able to cleave with Executes more often. It does add another button to click, and considering how fast the spec is, Inner Rage seems easier to use at first hands. Besides that, so in single targets, I guess will come down to numbers, but again, both of them work perfectly fine in terms of gameplay. Now, Furious Slash is now here, like I said, it is a talent. It also gives Rage 5, it doesn't do much damage, but gives you a stacking haste buff, 2% stacking 3 times. Now, the haste is nice, but I never felt the need for it. Okay, you getting haste in other means, easier means. Plus adding this buff for you to stack up and maintain in the middle of all of your massacring doesn't feel all that nice. You kind of feel cluttered, and again, I don't really feel like I need that extra haste, plus it's mostly useless in dungeons. The other issue with it is that you already have a filler, which is Whirlwind. Now this will give you slightly more rage and that haste buff. However, there's a later talent here that improves Whirlwinds even more, giving a 10% chance to proc in rage and 1 more rage per target hit. So they should kinda be in the same tier because they kinda fill that same role, because you're gonna either be choosing between having Furious Slash as a filler and getting a haste buff, or you are choosing between getting Whirlwinds as a filler and have that small chance to enrage you. But even if they were in the same tier, to be honest, Whirlwind is just gonna take the cake. Just overall, it's much better of a filler, just using when nothing to click, no strings attached. Plus you get that bonus of Enrage, if you're lucky. Next tier, the same as in Legion again, and then here we also get some pretty cool choices. We have Carnage as the easy choice, it reduces rampage cost by 10 and increases its damage by 10%. Alright, then we get Massacre, to increase the execute window to 35% of HP, up from 20%, probably worth on fights where you can make the most out of it, obviously raids. Remember, now it means you're gonna start generating more rage for more rampages, so there's that bonus. Then you have Floating Berserker, increases the rampage cost by 10, so from 85 to 95, but gives you a buff after you use it. No more waiting for 100 rage nonsense. I'm not gonna tell you all the infuriating times I got my rage to 99 in Legion and just waiting for the buff. Yeah. But now is when you use Rampage and you get 10% more damage and 10% more haste for 6 seconds. So again, more haste to your overall craze that is in rage, and they're gonna stack up perfectly. So you're just gonna get 35% haste on buffs alone every time you Rampage, which overall feels like the most fun choice of the tier because you already know how haste interacts with Fury. And then you get your AoE choices. Mid Cleaver, which I sort of mentioned earlier, so it's gonna make your Whirlwind better, but also works perfectly fine in single targets, just to get that extra enrage chance and that little bit extra rage. Then you get Dragon Roar, generates 10 rage as well, interestingly, and is just a big bursty AoE on a 35-second cooldown, and also adds a slow debuff. Pretty decent for dungeons if you like it for some extra damage, and a little bit of utility if you happen to need a slow. I never felt the need for it, but hey, it's here for you. And then you have a Blade Storm. Now, they changed Blade Storm for Fury, so it's actually usable. It's on a 1 minute cooldown, but the time that it channels is much shorter than before or the version that you have in ARMS. Plus, with haste, it's gonna reduce it even further. As you guessed it, with Enrage and even Frothing Berserker, the Blade Storm is gonna cast for just like what, 1 second and something, and if you mix Bloodlust in here, even less. So it gets really bursty as you get a lot of damage out in just 1 second, and actually feels quite Fury-like instead of ARMS-like. And one reason I liked it is because you can do some planning with it, such as try and get an Enrage first for the damage increase and the haste, and then multi-place a Siegebreaker, which is a later talent, which I'm gonna talk in a bit, and then just blow all of your load on Blade Storm. So you kinda get a setup to do, and it's a fast setup, so it still feels quite Fury-ish. But to be honest, all these choices work great. I tried them all in dungeons, and I enjoyed them all. I guess we'll come down to numbers, but also what you prefer, which is really cool. And then on the final tier, you also have interesting choices. You get Recklessness Abandon, kinda the same as in Legion. It's gonna make your Recklessness, so Old Battle Cry, grant 100 rage on use and make it last 3 seconds more. Now it's great, so you can immediately go for a Rampage on pull. That said, it's not a must as it was in Legion. It feels like a choice, because remember, Recklessness makes you generate double the rage now, so it's not gonna take much to build towards a Rampage. So it's here for you still if you want, but doesn't feel like a must, which is awesome. Anger Management is then in turn taking Recklessness and reduce the cooldown by 1 second per 25 rage used. So Rampage is your only spender and costs 85, so you're gonna get it to reduce about 3 seconds per rampage. However, you can take Frothing Berserker, so it actually costs more rage. So you can reduce it up to 4 seconds, although that would take 100 rage. So it's a bit weird number thing going on here, but essentially it's gonna make your Recklessness usable every 1 minute or so. So again, you kind of get a choice between these two talents of, do you want a more powerful Recklessness or do you want them more frequently? Now, all of that said, Siegebreaker is what feels the best here, because one, Recklessness stands pretty well on its own. For what it does, it feels good. So taking Siegebreaker, which is a new ability that you can use every 30 seconds that deals decent damage, generates 15 rage, again more rage, and on top adds a 15% damage increase for 10 seconds as a debuff. So it feels good to use just to make your rampages bigger and all of that and everything that follows, although I can see some people not liking it as it feels like a colossal smash, and there's obviously some planning that you're gonna have to do. Now what's interesting about it is that it's a must for dungeons. Why? Well, like I said on your Bladestorm talent, you can spread your Siege Breakers with Mid-Cleaver from Whirlwinds. Since it works with every single target ability, it will spread that damage increase buff on 5 targets total. On that alone, for trash packs is a must. To either just increase your cleaving damage that you're just gonna be doing naturally with your Whirlwinds and Raging Blows and Bloodthirsties and Rampages, or cooldowns like Bladestorm or Dragon's Roar. The cooldown is rather short, so you're gonna be able to use it practically every trash pack, and kinda adds some more decisions to make, which is cool. And yeah, so your talents do have some iffy things here or there. Like I said in the beginning, there are some changes still pending, so expect some of this to change, but nothing major. The core gameplay should stay the same, hopefully. So guys, that covers it. Fury Warrior is not a super complex spec, it really isn't. You get 3 buttons to click for the most part that you're just gonna be spamming, and 1 proc with Raging Blow, but it's just the speed of it, the feeling that you're just massacring and murdering and more massacring and more murdering, everything in sight. Just that alone makes it so fun. And of course, there are things that you still need to think about to perform optimally. For an example, your AoE and cleaving. You need to remember and keep track of your mid-cleaver buffs to make the most out of them. It's not much, but still it's something. Your rage is also not something that you need to manage overly, but still something that you can manage in order to maximize your DPS. Your cooldowns like Battlecry and Siegebreaker or even Bladestorm do have some planning as well in both single target and AoE on where to best place them and which order do you want to do to make the most out of them. And then of course your in-rage windows, which you should be looking to optimize also between your rampages and bloodthirsts, and all of that is gonna keep you further engaged. Again, not overly complicated or complex, but just the right amount to keep that super fast playstyle more interesting. Gear will take a toll, but not overly, it seems, at least not like in Legion. Haste probably not gonna be super important, as you get so much baseline, but still there's that to take in mind. As for the execute phase, is something that not everyone is gonna like, because execute kind of feels just like a stronger bloodthirst or something, but I personally like it. In Legion was something that we spammed, which kinda took the factor of it, like it kinda lost a bit of its weight. Here retained a bit, mainly because of the cooldown. And if you want big, slow executes, that's more of an arms thing anyway. Here execute is just feeding you more rage, like most of your other abilities really, just to fuel you with more rampages and in turn enrages, just to keep those adrenaline juices going during the execute timer. That's just the essence of Fury basically. And on top, you still have your mobility as well, like your charge, your heroic leap that you can even get the sprints. So even the mobility adds to the overall spec and how fast and brutal it is. So on that, let's hope it stays this way, as Fury tends to be great in betas and then it kind of falls flat in live, so we'll see. The only drawback you can take away from this is, I guess, the lack of utility. Like you don't really have much, you have like maybe a slow, that's really about it. So yeah, anyway guys, Do let me know what you all think of BFA's Fury Madness. Make sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell icon to get more better videos, and check out my Patreon if you wish to support the channel. As always, thank you for watching, have a fantastic day everyone, and I'll see you all next time. See ya!